Today is the second day of this June 2026 7-day Sesshin. And we'll continue commenting on the text that we started yesterday, Not One Single Thing, a commentary on the Platform Sutra by Shodo Harada. On the back of the back cover of this text, it says this: a lodestone of Zen Buddhism, the Platform Sutra presents the life, work, and wisdom of Enno, or Huineng, the fascinating 7th century sixth patriarch of Chinese Zen. His example has demonstrated to generations of students and spiritual seekers worldwide that enlightenment is attainable regardless of education or social standing. His exhortations to directly perceive one's nature right here and now still reverberate in contemporary Zen. We chant this master in our ancestral lines. The abbreviated line that we chant in the afternoons, he's the third Chinese ancestors. The abbreviated line just hits the highlights. He's one of the highlights. And in our full ancestral line, there's 90 names. And he's number 40, the 6th of the Chinese ancestors. He lived a long time ago, 638 to 713. I think it can be really helpful when we're talking about someone from so long ago to get a historical context of the time in which this person lived. So this is what was going on in the world. So this was during his lifetime. Christian missionaries from Ireland are beginning to evangelize across England. The Quran is published for the first time. In China, so this is where he is living, in China, Wu Zijian rises from favored concubine to empress. So this is the Empress Wu we hear so much about, who was a champion of Buddhism. So this is a little bit more about her. So she went from being the favorite concubine to empress, replacing the emperor's wife and dominating the court. She was the only woman to rule as emperor in Chinese history. She secures power through murder and terror. She challenges Confucian opposition to female rule and promotes both women's advancement and Buddhism. A force to be reckoned with. Also in China, boiled water is safer to drink than untreated water, and tea becomes popular. And there's also the belief that tea has medicinal properties. A little later in Enno's life, and that's the name that I'll be using because that's the Japanese version of his name, and that's what Shodo Harada uses instead of Huineng. I may sprinkle in Huineng in there occasionally, but mostly it'll be Enno. So another empress, so this is a Tang emperor. He dies, possibly poisoned by his wife, Empress Wei. Her sale of offices and Buddhist ordinations, along with her failure to eliminate rivals, leads to her overthrow. And in the Americas, in the American Southwest, the Pueblo peoples shifted from pit houses to stone and adobe apartment-style dwellings. And agriculture, especially maize, use of the bow and arrow, and larger permanent villages all expand. Very different what was going on in the Americas. I think it's important to emphasize that when we are speaking of these ancient masters, we're not talking about somebody else. I'm not really talking about someone that lived 1400 years ago, which is when he lived. Not really admiring what this individual attained. What's most important about bringing up this master is that this is just one expression of our own Buddha nature. I'm talking about you and me and your neighbor. Upon seeing into that nature, this is what Master Muman says, you will walk hand in hand with all the ancestral teachers in the successive generations of our lineage. The hair of your eyebrows entangled with theirs, seeing with the same eyes, hearing with the same ears. Upon seeing into that nature, it'll be like hearing someone speak about a place you already know well, your own hometown. Their words will be like yours. Their experience is yours. Then their realization won't seem like something that happened so long ago in the distant past. It'll be alive and present in you. This is just a preview of what is to come for you. So the Platform Sutra itself, it begins with Enno as a teacher, already as a teacher, telling of his early life. He's speaking to an assembly of monks, nuns, lay people, government officials, scholars. He was invited to this group at a temple to teach and to give jukai. There's something that needs to be said about the Platform Sutra, that there are 5 editions of it. And they're similar to each other, but there are some differences. Sometimes a section that may be in one edition is missing in a couple of the others, and maybe somewhere else in a couple of the others. For instance, this assembly that he's speaking to, 2 of the editions say that there were 1,000 people in the assembly. The other 3 say there were 10,000. Big difference. But our examination of the Platform Sutra isn't scholarly. maybe scholarly reasons these differences would be important. Our looking into it isn't literary either. Our purposes, our dharma. That's it. This is called a sutra, despite it not having been spoken by the Buddha himself, because, like the Buddha's teachings, it points to our nature and how to realize it. It's called the Platform Sutra. It's because Enno was sitting on a raised platform so that the group can see and hear him. His voice can carry across the 1,000 or 10,000 people that were there. So this is how it begins. And I will be reading, this is from the Platform Sutra that has been translated by Red Pine. When he spoke this Platform Sutra, Master Wei Nung, so Enno, said, "Good friends, purify your minds by reciting the teaching of the Mahaprajna Paramita." Then the master stopped speaking while he purified his own mind. He was invited to speak on the Mahaprajna Paramita. After a long time, he spoke again. "Good friends, please listen. My kind-hearted father was originally from Fanyang, but he was dismissed, which is in the north of China. But he was dismissed from office and banished to, and I won't clutter this up with all of these place names, he was banished to the south of China and lived in such and such place as a commoner. My father died when I was quite young, and my widowed and destitute mother moved to such and such place, which is further in the south of China, where I experienced hardship and poverty and sold firewood in the marketplace. Then, one day, a shopkeeper ordered a load of firewood brought to his store. After he took the delivery and paid me, I walked toward the door and met a customer reciting the Diamond Sutra out loud. As soon as I heard the words, my mind felt clear and awake. He had an awakening experience. Kensho. All indications are he'd never practiced a day in his life. And the words that he heard from the Diamond Sutra were these: abiding nowhere, awakened mind arises. We'll get to that in a second. Here we are on day 2 of the Sesshin, with several days ahead of us, hours and hours of sitting. Some of us have done many, many, many Sesshins in the past. Sit daily. And we have yet to have had an awakening experience. Yet this upstart from the backwoods of China has a Kensho experience just hearing someone say something without having sat a day in his life. What is up with that? At least that's how I felt the first time I heard this story, after having practiced for a lot of years. How is it that someone can break through without practice? I think it's possible that Eno, in his life, was refining his mind. With the loss of his father, he was 3 years old when his father died. There is, of course, the effect on a child, but also the effect on the mother, which can affect the child. I saw this video of a woman she has her child on her hip. The child is somewhere between 2 and 3 years old. And this child is watching her face. Every expression on the mother's face is mirrored on this child's face. The mother is holding this child on her hip, so she kind of has one hand holding this child, and she's trying to open a jar with the other hand and balance this child. And she grimaces as she's trying to do all of this while opening this jar. And the grimace on the mother's face is mirrored on this child's face. Perhaps the same happened with Eno, seeing the distress of his mother at the loss of her husband. His mother was illiterate, so she had few prospects. And she, of course, couldn't teach him to read or write, so he too grew up illiterate. And engaged in really physically demanding work. Hazardous work. There were, of course, the risk of injuries, venomous snakes, picking up firewood, picking up wood that would be good for fire, venomous insects in China, bears, and at that time, tigers were common. So to avoid danger, of course, that would require meticulous attention. All the conditions were just right for refining the mind, for awakening. Could be something else, maybe. Maybe that wasn't what led to his awakening. How is it that hidden talent like this is uncovered in an adult? There's a recent case of something similar. It wasn't spiritual awakening, but a different kind of awakening. Pearl Fryer was a topiary artist. Topiary is this art of sculpting trees and bushes into shapes. My family would, whenever, it's like as soon as we would either going anywhere, we would have to go to one interstate or another. And along one of the interstates, there was this hedgerow that had been shaped, trimmed in the shape of a dragon. That's the kind of thing that he did. He was born in the 1930s to a sharecropping family, drafted into the military, served in the Korean War. And when he got out of the military, he eventually moved to South Carolina. and worked blue-collar job, soda can factory. In the 1980s, Pearl Fryer wanted to move in town in this place in South Carolina, but he was blocked from purchasing a home in the city limits because the white residents believed that a black person wouldn't maintain his property and it would bring down their property values. This was in the 1980s, not so long ago. So he couldn't buy in town, so he bought property on the outskirts of town. And this became a man on a mission. He wanted to prove those folks wrong, that not only was he going to maintain his property, but he was going to win a local gardening award for doing it. He visited a local nursery, and received what he describes as a 3-minute lesson on topiary. And it clicked for him. He awakened to it. He rescued these throwaway plants from the compost pile of the nurseries, planted them in his 3 acres of yard. And in around 1988, when he was 49 years old, he began trimming the plants and trees in his yard, mostly for stress relief from working 12-hour shifts at the factory. In no time, he became known as the Picasso of plants. He sculpted spiraling bushes, diamond shapes, mushrooms. His specialty was fish bones, all on living plants. People came from around the world to South Carolina to see his garden. He won multiple awards, including the award he was after, and became the subject of a documentary. Pearl Fryer died 2 months ago at the age of 86. Had he not been denied that ability to buy that home in town, he may have never discovered his genius. If Eno had been early or late in delivering that firewood, he may have never heard those words. Still, how is it that someone can come to awakening without practice? In the evening ritual that you heard last night, that is said each night of Sesshin, the words, "Even as night darkens the green earth, the wheel turns. Death follows birth." Isn't it also possible that birth follows death, or rebirth follows death? Isn't it possible that these talents came from practice in previous lifetimes. Isn't it possible that you have been doing the same? That this isn't your first go-round at this practice. Now we're going to Not One Single Thing by Shodo Harada. This is what he says. From birth, every person has a karmic affiliation with a way of doing or being. We all have talents and skills that are not just genetic, but also in response to the time and the place in which we are born. It was as if Enno had been born to hear and realize this sutra. Now, the words he heard. Abiding nowhere, awakened mind arises. Now, other translations of that same phrase is dwelling nowhere, mind comes forth. Without abiding anywhere, let the mind work. Or one that you'll hear frequently in this zendo. Arouse the mind without its abiding anywhere. But since Harada uses abiding nowhere, awakened mind arises, that's what we'll use. Abiding nowhere. What is that? There is this Japanese word that hints at this. The word is kokoro. Kokoro. And the last part of that word, koro, Koro, that root word, is a Japanese onomatopoeia. So it's a sound word. We have them in English too. So like the sound that a bee makes, buzz. That's an onomatopoeia. Or the sound a cat makes, meow. Well, in Japanese, koro is the sound a ball makes when it's rolling along. So whether it's a bowling ball or some marbles or a tire, it makes that sound. Korokoro, 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 korokoro. So kokoro, mind, is something that's always moving, always changing, never stopping, abiding nowhere. But for most of us, we abide somewhere in our thoughts, usually, about what's happening. Hearing a bird sing, we may be thinking about what kind of bird that is. Or maybe it's that another kind of bird. But when abiding nowhere, we experience it directly. So when hearing a bird chirping, there's just even hearing the rain like we did yesterday. Shh. It's how the mind works when it's functioning at its cleanest and clearest. Instead of experiencing life as it rolls along, we get stuck in one place, lost in our ideas, and we filter reality through those ideas. Here's a story. A woman complained to a visiting neighbor, a visiting friend, that her neighbor was a poor housekeeper. You should see how dirty her children are, and her house. It is almost a disgrace to be living in the same neighborhood as her. Take a look at those clothes she has hung out on the line. See the black streaks on the sheets and towels? The friend walked up to the window and said, I think the clothes are quite clean, my dear. Those streaks, they're on your window. Shodo Harada speaks. Because we carry around our past conditioning, our opinions, our attachments, we are muddying the waters of our mind. When we are stuck in the past or thinking about the future, there is no fresh perception, no wonder, no joy. Just as the water clears when the pond is still, when we see the present directly, our mind is clear. This is a healthy state of mind. When we see the present directly, when we're not clinging to what we experience, awakened mind arises. It's not created, not produced. It arises, not because it's not covered up in layers of self. Awakened mind arises. Here's another story. A man whose axe was missing suspected his neighbor's son. The boy walked like a thief, looked like a thief, and spoke like a thief. But the man found his axe while he was digging in the valley. And the next time he saw his neighbor's son, the boy walked, looked, and spoke like any other child. Shodo Harada says, in our essence of mind, mountains are simply mountains. Flowers are flowers, and the sound of the wind is the sound of the wind. We hear, we see, and we leave each thing as we hear or see it, adding nothing at all. Everything but that is just dualistic thinking. Changing with every single moment, our mind manifests our clear nature. This is abiding nowhere. Awakened mind arises. With all this sitting that we do during Sesshin, with all this practice, all of the practice that we do, not just in the Zendo. We have this unique opportunity to clearly see our minds abiding somewhere, grasping onto a thought, a feeling, whether we're bathing in it or grasping a hold of it to get rid of it. It's still clinging. Again and again, we'll have the opportunity to release our grip. Not by force, not by stomping it down, suppression, but just by opening up. Rolling along. Simply being with what is. Empty-handed, empty-headed. Some final words from Shodo Harada. Non-abiding or non-attachment is the characteristic of our essence of mind. With non-attachment, we have no time to get caught on things. We are always flowing. When we stop flowing, our mind becomes foul, like stagnant water, or fixed, like water frozen into ice. The non-abiding mind of Zazen is not just for being in the Zendo, whether we are sitting, moving, working, silent, or speaking. All of it is Zazen. The cultivation of flowing mind is Zazen. Then we can become the flower, become the moon, become the stars. Absorbed into them, we become everything we encounter, completely and totally. That is our correct state of mind. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.